The conceptual framework that all my portraiture is drawn from is the archival images and museology, and specifically the Tyndale archival images, but also romantic notions of historical images of Aborigines. For me, the Tyndale photographs are a story about persistence and endurance. And I think that's the story of Aboriginal people. I was only aware of the Tyndale collection because my grandmother carried a few of them around in her purse, and they were 3 images, one of her mother, one of her father, and one of her husband, and they were from 1938 in Palm Island. They were obviously archival. They looked like mugshots. They were black and white, and the one of my grandfather struck me especially because he's young, and it was the first time I'd seen him young. And the ones of my great-grandparents were unknown to me. I had never seen them before. And that was my first way of encountering Tyndale. It opened up a new world for me in terms of my relationship to my grandfather and my great-grandparents. And I'm sure for my whole family, actually, because I've shown them to my family, and everybody just, it's changed the way we think about, the way history is recorded, particularly on communities. The portraiture is really the only way to, in exhibition format, to present Tyndale to an audience. You look at a portrait of someone from 1938 who's seated and posing for a portrait, regardless of the context, of the scientific context, people can directly relate to what that is like. Yeah, I don't know anyone who will be unhappy that these images exist. Given that, the history of the government's relationship with black people has been one of dislocation, disruption, upheaval, and a lot of black fellas have lost a lot of contact with that part of their history, and this by no means repairs that, but it opens up something for a lot of people who are encountering these images and data for the first time. I think it's all about expanding the idea of what the Tyndale collection is and what is on offer to families, really, and it expands the idea of not just the way families can give themselves permission to think about the Tyndale collection, but also about themselves. And so those drawings, those original drawings, were based on these photos, images of my family from Palm Island from 1938. And so what I wanted to do, the whole point of my portraiture practice, is that after going through these images, I realised that every one of these images carries a gaze, and it's a really intense gaze, and it's a gaze of persistence. It's a gaze of endurance, and it's a gaze of anger and passion and intelligence and complexity and sophistry and emotion and love and honour. And I wanted to imbue all of my portraiture with that. At the same time, I wanted to strip away from my portraits any ideas of the noble savage or the primitive or the virtuous. And so I wanted to get rid of this idea that Aborigines are austere or even good. We're just normal people. Not only are we just normal people, we are modern contemporary people, full of all the complexities and intelligence and depth that every other people are allowed to be, but Aborigines are not, particularly in this country. We are always seen through an extremely narrow lens that is, that is kind of focused down to a fine point that ends up somewhere between the Stone Age and utopia. And it's an unreachable kind of ideal that never existed. And so I wanted to throw that away. Actually, I wanted to grab it and break it all to pieces and have a ceremonial burning of it. Yeah. So going through these images, there is this gaze that is consistent. And I also wanted to produce images of strength and power. And so these are images, and I photoshopped all these images, so they're pristine, and they kind of, all those things that I think of when I think of blackfellas and how we engage with each other, I think they're all encompassed in these images, and I wanted to show that. I always have it in mind to produce these drawings of photographs, usually photographs that I take myself. But yeah, not always the case. But yeah, usually photos I take myself, and work from there. So I will change the drawing to suit my own sensibilities. But mostly it's about using a good image, and having a good idea of who the person is and what I want to achieve out of it. And it usually that's why all of these big portraits are essentially what they directly reference black and white photography, yeah, and that kind of historical practice of scientific record. The scientific lens, but also given that the source material, the original source material inspiration for my portraiture is Tyndale, and specifically images from 1938 on Palm Island. And so these are also kind of referencing that era of science, particularly around like scientific record of humans as being, inferior subspecies or subsets. I mean, part of what Tyndale was doing was recording. He was sent out. He was recording genealogies because he wanted to see if you could breed the black out of Aborigines, out of people, through breeding. And so he was doing things like testing skin colour, taking blood samples and hair. And his best friend, Joseph Birdsall, was into the eugenics of the research. So he was doing skull measuring, measuring skin, and that sort of stuff. There's still a lot of belief in that kind of science and its legacy. Yeah. Especially in countries like Australia. So, yeah.
So that's ultimately why what these portraits are about. That's why they carry this gaze and this kind of intensity to the figure in a very, very direct gaze. The source reference is Tyndale, but that's a scientific record. So they don't really sit alongside what you would think of as or accept as portraiture in art, given that they're scientific record. I mean, what I'm doing with my portraiture practice is removing the framework of science and setting it aside, and and producing portraiture that is, that carries a kind of an emotional and critical depth to it that has nothing to do with the source material, actually, and has more to do with my own family and what they think of what I do. That includes my extended family as well. The only kind of role model I ever did a portrait of was William Barrick, and that was for the National Gallery of Victoria. And what's in 2011, I think. And gee, was it that long? Was it really? Yeah. That was for a special project, and I really wanted to do it. And he's really the only person I've done one of these big portraits of who's not directly related to me. And although I did a drawing of Lex Wotton as well, but he's married to my cousin on Palm, on my mum's side, and so and he's known me all my life, so yeah. So I wouldn't say he was kind of somebody I didn't know, and I also and to do that portrait, I actually went to Palm Island and had a meeting with him at his place and talked to him about the portrait and the project that it was connected to. Yeah, they've certainly grown. I don't know if I had planned it that way, because I was only thinking originally of producing portraits of my grandfathers who I wanted to, they were always my heroes, and I wanted to make them big, and I wanted to honour them for being who they were to me. And so, but the portraits, they were always and still are very personal. So, and there's no getting away from that. And I think all portraiture is anyway. And they also, my choice of subject and the technical kind of specificities about each drawing say a lot about who I am personally as well. And I certainly am aware of that when I go into them, when I start. Drawing's it's like handwriting. You give away a lot of who you are. You show a lot of who you are in your drawing. Certainly, somebody like me who's had a lot of years' experience, I can tell a lot about someone's drawings. Tell a lot about the drawing, and I can tell a lot about the person who did it. And I think all people who draw are like that. Yeah, I've done a bit of life drawing over the years, and I've taught drawing, and it's I still love it actually. And I reckon I've been drawing seriously for probably about 40 years, I'd say. I'm 50, and I think I first started taking drawing seriously when I was about 10, in the sense that I knew I wanted to keep drawing and I wanted to get better and better at drawing. And I knew that if I just, I loved it back then, and I love it still, and I had a sense that if I just kept with it, I would get better. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it back then, or even when I was in high school, but it has served me well over the years, I have to say. And yeah, well, when I was first approached to produce an artwork for Cairns Art Gallery, this is the drawing I had in mind. I thought immediately it would be good to produce a drawing of my father, given that he passed away 3 years ago. And then it was only after a little while thinking about it that I thought it would be really good to actually locate myself in Cairns and produce the drawing in Cairns. And because I thought conceptually it makes sense to produce the drawing in Cairns, where my mother lives and where I'm from, and you know, my brothers and I were, and my sister, we were all born up here, and this area is who we are, and it just made sense for me to come back here and do the drawing here, because that would make it would do two things. It would make this artwork a Cairns story. The story of this artwork itself is a Cairns story, but the story of the subject is a Cairns story. And so I think it strengthens both stories to have done the drawing here in Cairns. And this is the first time I've produced a portrait in Cairns, actually. Yeah. And I think it's completely appropriate that this is the drawing. And I think it's you know, I think this will lead to other projects in Cairns for me, I think. Certainly this has been a positive experience so far. Yeah, I think of my practice as being well, it's multidisciplined, but I would say that I'm a drawer before I'm anything else. But I have a printmaking background, and I've had exhibitions of photography and 3D and video and installation, and but I would say that all of the work, they're all underpinned by a kind of conceptual framework that you can apply to any arm of my practice. And the framework is essentially, you know, stems from my experience personally growing up in North Queensland, but also my family's history, and that sensibility underpins everything I do. So, you know, in terms of the different strands of my practice, you could sit anything alongside anything else and it will fit. So you could have like a sculpture or a text work or something, or like a photograph of mine, and you can put a drawing at one end of a big room and put a photograph or a text work at the other end, and those two works will call to each other. They will recognize each other, and unavoidably, because they come from the same place. They, at their core, they speak the same language. They have the same sensibility about them. Drawing is a highly individual pursuit, and highly solitary as well. But I love making videos. I'm not a trained videographer or a film editor, so that requires me to put a team together, and so at different times in my career I've been able to work with extremely talented people, and the biggest benefit of working with putting together a team and working with talented people is that you get to take advantage of their skill set, and also not just their skill set, but their judgment and their taste, and that's really exciting, because I have to say that when I'm working in collaboration, even when it's my project, I'm pretty easily pleased by what people have to offer, and I'm generally excited at the prospect that somebody might bring to the table something that doesn't occur to me at all, and if it's something that's really, really new that I know I like, there's just no way that I'm not going to bend the project a little bit to fit it in. And you know, if someone has a really interesting way of editing a shot, that I have to just say, well, you know, maybe that changes the way everything is edited, and I just get really excited about it all then. In the early 90s, when I first was able to source Tyndale images of my family, and the images I got out were something more akin to photocopies, and I knew that I wanted to blow them up and do drawings of them, but I just didn't have enough data in the face and around the eyes and you know, the skin and the clothes they were wearing. And a few years ago, I was able to get these high resolution scans of the same images, and they were a revelation. And so that gave me more to work with, but it really kind of just, I just thought, oh wow, these drawings, I need to show them to my family. Of the photos, I mean, I need to show them to my family and cousins. And so but the images themselves, they had little blemishes in them, a lot. And I just went in and cleaned them right up. And so the images I have now are really pristine. And they're large format images that I spent a long time cleaning them up, and they're great. Yeah. Well, the palette suggests black and white photography anyway, and you know, so also just the way that these images are cropped contemporizes the archival reference, which would not be cropped like this at all. But this is this sense of cropping refers to, you know, contemporary art practice, and also, you know, things like advertising, just how images of human faces appear in popular culture. But this palette references black and white photography, and this treatment, this really kind of delicate rendering will give it an appearance that this is a very smoothed out image, and it will have a photographic quality to it. There will be a sense of depth, you know, and you know, I'm talking about scarring and skin. But when I came in this afternoon, it was really windy, so I couldn't seal it at all. I ended up just finishing it off and basically just sitting here until the wind died down, which wasn't until the sun went down. But I'm prepared to just sit and wait tomorrow as well. So. That's the first time I've dropped the first piece I've dropped. I haven't dropped a piece of charcoal either.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Yeah, every drawing I do it, and it just pisses me off because I can't use them anymore. I can use them, but it just means I've got to grab onto little tiny pieces. Really, really. It's a sign that I'm getting a bit lazy or I'm getting tired. Well, not lazy, but complacent.
Oh, maybe tired.
Yeah, maybe a little bit tired. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed this. I thought doing a portrait of my dad after 3 years might be, well, it's emotional, but I thought it might be too emotional to want to do another one. But I've enjoyed this quite a bit, and I think I'm going to do another one. Maybe not next, but I'll certainly do another one. But the next ones I'm doing will be portraits of my kids.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it just well, you know, it all depends how I feel. And I was thinking about planning out a series of drawings, but yeah, that doesn't really work. I've tried to do that. Yeah. I have been planning on doing a series of portraits of people who I admire, who aren't related to me.
Yeah.
That's something I've been in the back of my mind for some years, and I think I will do that sometime. It'll be the first time I will have produced a series of portraits of people who aren't my family. But these will be all portraits of people who I do know personally. So, and they won't be like, I don't plan on doing any famous people. It's just people I admire. So some, you know, a few academics that I know, some researchers, just friends, people I've known for 20 years, who I greatly admire as people of integrity and you know, people I trust, and that. And also, you know, there's a couple of writers I really admire, who I know personally, and a couple of artists who I talk with often about things. It's not the sort of thing that wins the Archibald. Yeah, I mean, the Archibald is all about the right kind of artist producing the right kind of portrait of the right kind of subject. And so I'm already the wrong kind of artist, and I do pretty good portraiture, but rarely the right kind of subject. Well, this is looking pretty good. Yeah. I'm just going to pick this up. Yeah, I suppose it is pretty fragile in the sense that it has a layer of sealer over the top, and if I rubbed into it, you would smudge it. But it's not as fragile as if it was an unsealed surface. Yeah, so it's a little more sturdy than that, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't be rubbing into it. There's parts here like the eyes where when the first coat of sealer I was really working into it, and so they'd be fairly sturdy, but the rest of the drawing wouldn't be. And so I've just got to be really mindful. As mindful as I always am though. When I hand this over to the museum, they only need to apply standard care to it. In the sense that, you know, the surface of the work needs to be protected. But the work itself, it will be completely sealed. So, mind you, they shouldn't go out of their way to damage it. But again, that's just standard care. And you know, as a new acquisition, it will go through the conservator's office first. So it will get the once over, and they will say yay or nay on it. Yeah, I think with drawings, I think you kind of have to. I think some conservators have to have a look at it first. I reckon. I would assume. Like if they get works on paper, especially, I think. I would reckon. I don't know. Never worked for a big gallery or a big collection, but I've met a few conservators over the years. Ah, I just realised I should have put a time lapse on this. Do the next one. Would have been a good time lapse. You're only about, I reckon I've done somewhere between 40, 45 of these drawings, and you would be the third person to actually do some filming of one of them. It's a very solitary thing, but it's not secret. It's not a secret, sacred science. It's just drawing, and it's drawing in charcoal. Yeah. Richard Bell once posted on Facebook, he just said, in the end, there will be painting. And I said, in the end, there'll be drawing in charcoal, if we're talking about the end. Yeah, there won't be painting, that's for sure. Yeah, and it's charcoal and pastel, white Conti. Yeah, it's about as traditional as you can get. Yep. Yeah, particularly with charcoal. Although I use almost exclusively, I use compressed charcoal sticks, just because it's consistent. I know some artists who only use willow, and I don't mind willow, but it's not as consistent. Whereas, you know, I use a soft or medium grade charcoal stick, compressed charcoal. And yeah, but I'm aware that this is as traditional as it gets. It's also really cheap. Charcoal's cheap. If I was going to produce a portrait this size in oils, that would be, you know, maybe $300 worth of paint. Well, and also charcoal. Well, drawing is what I'm best at, and charcoal makes a black mark, and I'm just really familiar with it as a tool, and I'm familiar with the kind of mark it makes, both in how dark, you know, you can make a black mark. It's not like graphite. You can make a black mark on the one stroke produces an even black mark, and I'm aware of the quality of the stroke that I can achieve with charcoal as well, as opposed to pencil, which you know, it has its advantages, but it has its limitations too. You know, producing a pencil drawing this large would take some doing. And I've used graphite sticks to produce large drawings too, which is pretty good. But there are issues with graphite when you come to seal a drawing, and also it's very kind of finicky and fragile. And graphite's nice though, nice and smooth to draw with. I like it a lot. I don't do a series of studies. There's been a few times when I've worked on other projects like surfboards and sometimes on videos and photography and text works where I'll do little thumbnails and maybe take some notes go with whatever I'm going to sit down and work on. Pardon me. But with the portraits, I'll usually I'll spend a lot of time planning it out in my head, and usually the drawing will be pretty much fully formed in my head before I even start it. And so in my head, the drawing will get to a point where it will be getting closer and closer to what I have in my head, and it's just really just kind of rendering and filling in the shape of the face and everything. And I would already have like a tonal understanding of what I'm aiming for. I will already have a plan to achieve that. I will already have a textural understanding of the surface of the face itself, but also of the canvas, and I will already have a sense of scale, but a sense of form for it. I already have a plan for how I'm going to shape the face in terms of rendering and texturing. So yeah, it's just I'm not the kind of artist who will just stand here and then start and push things around like paint, and just slowly build things up from there. I'll usually have a pretty good idea of where I'm heading with it before I'll start. And I think I've usually done all of my stuff like that. This is not a kind of drawing technique that is very forgiving of big mistakes. So every one of these drawings is full with hundreds of mistakes, but they're all small and incremental, and I have enough experience to just go through them or go around them and rescue, the slightly larger ones. But there's lots of I'm not going to say what they are. Okay. But there's lots of little mistakes because I just always try things out. Well, I have a sense of that I have a very kind of comprehensive plan, but that incorporates a lot of experimentation and a kind of looseness too. And my drawing action also incorporates a lot of looseness. So, for instance, a lot of the detail is held around the center of the face, particularly the eyes, and then as you move away from the center of the face, the drawing becomes looser and looser. And also, as you get to the edge of the face, I'm hardly even concerned with an actual defined edge to the face, because the focus of the drawing should be here, should be in the center. But if you look at the drawing technically, there is a lot more kind of a lot more control over the actual line that I'm employing in the center of the face. Whereas in the edges, I'm not being not haphazard, but certainly a lot more casual and carefree about the looseness. And there are points of detail that that kind of demand a sense of control, I think. But also with these drawings, the background color is called armor plated, and it's a specific color that I have picked. It's kind of neutral grey, but it's slightly warmer, so it evokes charcoal or some sort of natural stone rather than like a battleship grey. And so that's a specific choice in the background, and all of the big drawings have the same colour. So because that choice is specific, and this is the background that I'm using because I'm also referencing the neutral palette of black and white photography, I want that colour to come through the drawing. So I'm not dismissing it, I'm not trying to cover it up either. So this background is as much as a part of the face as anything else I've planned for it. So I don't want to layer the charcoal and the pastel over the drawing to the point where I'm actually covering up this background colour. So because of that, this drawing is really quite sparse in areas, but it's also it also doesn't allow for mistakes, because there's no chance to cover things up. So I have to start with a really good plan, and I have to be very specific in terms of my control over the tools. Yeah, and because of the style of drawing that I'm doing, it kind of requires me to do this in one burst from start to finish. If I started drawing this and got about a third of the way through and then went away for a few weeks and come back again, I risk employing a slightly different psychology to the drawing that would be evidenced in the drawing action. It would look like I went away and then came back and started drawing it again. And I think a face, when you're drawing a portrait, I think there has to be a cogency to it. It has to look like one kind of sense of this person. Can't look like half the face is saying something and the other side is contradicting it. So, which is what you run the risk of doing. It's just a folder called Time Lapses Vernon project. Yeah, so I'll just show you. So it's this one here. So unwrapping the canvas.
Yeah.
And they're all the clips are like about 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
And they all represent about 40 minutes.
Yeah. All right.
And so, like.
Yeah.
So it's mainly, I don't know, I think there's about a dozen of them.
Yeah.
And it's really the whole drawing.
Okay.
So,
Fantastic.
yeah, thought,
That could work.
yeah, so you can use as much as you want.
All right.
So, and I was moving the camera around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the eyes, doing the nose and the mouth.
Yeah.
More focus, more on the mouth. Yeah, so it's heaps of good data.
Yeah. So you start quicker and then it gets a bit slower, filling in the detail or getting to the detail?
Yeah, well, once you start mapping it all out, there's a point where you, at the beginning, all my choices have to be really good.
Yeah.
Otherwise you risk the drawing getting out of control later on. But once all those main things are marked in, then it gets really quick. But it still takes, 2 days. And then it gets to that point there, where there's where you can really see that the face is coming together, and just really, there's a point where you hit the home stretch. And then you get to like this point here, where I'm putting the white on.
Yeah.
And this was the last thing I did before I left to get back to Brisbane on the weekend.
Okay, it's pretty impressive.
And then when I came back, so I already had in my head what I was going to do with the hair and everything. And then when I came back, I just started doing this, putting the hair in.
Right.
And more details around the eyes and generally, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that's all the time lapses. Yeah, this is the standard size that most of my portraits are. So it's 1.8 by 2.4 meters. I just get the canvases made up now, but they're all linen. Yeah, I've done a lot of life drawing, and I really enjoy having a person in front to draw from life. But the conceptual framework that all my portraiture is drawn from is the archival images